Hi, I'm Anthony from the Design Emotive, and you're listening to On-Site, a podcast where we sit down with architects on their construction sites and have a conversation. For episode 1, we are sitting down with Jeanne Graham and Chris Barnes at their Elsternwick House project. Jeanne is a director of Winter Architecture, an award-winning collaborative architecture practice with offices in Fitzroy and Torquay, but projects across Australia. Chris is the principal of Field Office, an award-winning architecture studio that has a people-first approach to practice. On the podcast, we talk about collaboration, in particular the differences between group projects at uni versus practice, what it's like collaborating together, how collaborating with the client can yield a much more beautiful outcome, and more. This podcast is by the Design Emotive, so don't forget to follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, visit our website www.thedesignemotive.com and follow On-Site Podcast on Instagram. And don't forget to check the show notes for links and further information. Enjoy. All right, so if you can both introduce yourselves, who you are, what you do, all that good stuff.
Yeah, cool. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Jeanne Graham. I'm from Winter Architecture.
And my name's Chris Barnes. I'm from Field Office Architecture.
And we've collaborated together on this project in Elsternwick.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we should also probably note, because I'm wiping sweat off my face, it's currently, 37, 38 degrees?
Yeah.
So
Feels like 45.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we sound sweaty and look sweaty, there's a very good reason for it. That's for sure. So this isn't your first project you've collaborated on in the past?
No.
So do you mind sharing how, I guess, you first two met? This is how we met story, but also then maybe perhaps go into detail on the first project you collaborated on.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think we were trying to work it out before, maybe 2003 or 4. Through mutual friends, we both studied architecture and used to hang out at some of the dingy bars down Caledonia Lane in the city.
Is it still open?
No.
No.
Is that dingy?
Yeah. But, so I studied at Deakin and Chris went to Melbourne, and so there was a bit of a rivalry there. And then a few years later, once we'd finished uni, Chris had a practice and I was starting to look at doing my own thing. And so we started catching up for coffee, and then a space came open in his share office, and so I moved in. Yeah,
so we had this, it was a sort of open plan shared office. There's a couple of other small businesses in there. There's a graphic design company and a couple of other people, and we just sort of found that, at the time we were both like one-man bands, and we were finding that, we would get projects and, we'd collaborate, ask each other's, advice and questions about what we were doing, and then trying to sort of, we just sort of thought that was really successful, I think.
Yeah, well, I think we have a similar design sensibility, and it was really easy. So decisions were very quick. Like, for example, this design for this particular house that we're sitting in happened really smoothly and really spookily easily.
Yeah.
Like, we had both went away and done a design and come together, and it was so similar. And so it was really easy to extract the components that we were both trying to find and then put them together. And it's been a really smooth process the whole way. There's been no
I think when we both went away and did those initial sketches, we were both, I think the only difference was like which side of the site the corridor was down the side.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So which side were you, left or right?
I think it was on that side.
Yeah.
So we went with yours.
Yeah.
You won that little battle.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, going back a little bit, so we're sharing studio. We actually shared a couple of studios now, haven't we?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah. And 2017, I think it was, my wife and I decided to take our practice overseas for a few months, and basically the premise was we were going to go to Bali and see if we could run the practice remotely for 3 months. And yeah, it was something that we loved and had an amazing experience. But before that, we started winning this work, and we thought, okay, like we're going to need some people in Melbourne who we can potentially collaborate with to kind of help deliver this. And due to sort of, I guess, our working relationship at the time, it sort of seemed a no-brainer to sort of tap Jeanne on the shoulder and see if she was interested.
And so we met with the clients and they seemed fine with it. And that's sort of where it went. So we're very much 50-50. We're both the architects and we're involved in every decision together. And I guess the great thing from a client's perspective is that they get more bang for their buck. So they get 2 architects for the price of 1, essentially. And we work together as a team and we deliver a much more elegant project. So we were able to focus more diligently on special areas and as opposed to complete, like we work together as a team, which I think is great.
So to go back even further now, so Jeanne studied at Deakin, you studied at Melbourne Uni. I can't take a side because I studied at both. But, quite often students begrudgingly get put into groups for, studios or just other subjects. How have you found the difference between collaborating in a student environment versus collaborating in a professional environment? Do you remember those group projects back in the day?
Yeah.
I've sort of pushed most of those to the back of my memory, to be honest.
I enjoyed those. I had a good time because it enabled me to meet and work with other types of people and students. And often I would put myself into situations where I would be in groups where people I didn't know. And it meant that I learnt how to communicate with different kinds of design and intents and things like that. And just really manage what pieces you could do and how you could be part of a team. And I think, collaborating, that actually was one of the things I was like, I don't really want to collaborate with people because it might be a bit harder. But it hasn't been like that with this because I think we have the same intent. Like we have the same philosophies on a lot of things, so it makes it a lot easier. Whereas if we didn't match in those areas, we could have had a lot more clashes where we might not have recovered from.
So how do you go when there is such a difference in ideas? How did you decide the corridor side?
I think we
how
just
do you work
pitched it
through?
to each other.
And then sort of do you have a process to sort of, because obviously we all think we have the best ideas.
Not necessarily.
Or is it more so checking the ego at the door?
Yeah, definitely put your ego at the door. It's more about what we think, because you had it over there because you wanted to have all this butler's pantry and everything under there.
Yeah.
So, and it would have been awesome as well. And this was here because it had a different idea, was to have connection through.
Yeah.
So if the client was swayed towards more private stairs, then that may have been the way that it went. But in this occasion, they were okay with it and they wanted that transparency. So it is particular to the client, and both ideas would have been great.
So did you pitch both ideas to the client?
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. But I mean, I think that was early on, and I think eventually the way that often you collaborate in these sort of environments is that you sit down together and, everything can be rationalized and everything can be argued. So, as you rightly said, you can't have ego in that situation. And, when we sort of decided, we're going to keep this open corridor to the north, the way that we broke it down together and taking the feedback from the client, and then also, I guess, the rationalization for the decisions that you'd made, it just opened it up to me. And I was like, okay, that's clearly the best way forward in this scenario. And yeah.
And it's also about where we fleshed it out with the client and actually established what their true needs for the space were and what would be the right fit for that. Whereas with Aintree, we didn't have that. We had the same plan from the beginning.
Yeah.
It was pretty straightforward. I mean, we had a flip because one of the guys in our team was like, oh, maybe you could have the bathroom at the rear, which we hadn't quite anticipated originally. So that was pretty, but the main characters, so to speak, were all in place. It was just a shift.
Yeah. I think with that one as well, I mean, it's such a small site.
Yeah.
You know, it was tiny. And, you know, the options from a planning perspective anyway were so limited. You know, and we were able to work through that one really quickly. And we had a really great client who was just sort of, the moment they saw something on pen to paper, they were like, yes, great, you know, that's what we want.
Keep in mind, what they had was,
oh yeah,
they had their bathroom outside, like they had to take their kids to the toilet, like hold their hands in the middle of the night.
They came to you with a plan already.
Well, the house was...
No, the existing
house.
Where
The
they were
existing
living,
house.
bad way. And then we come along and I think anything would have been better.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
was a low bar, but I'd like to think that we delivered something that was pretty special.
Well, it is. Yeah. I think it's quite good for what the site had so many issues, like with the set in heritage conditions, heights on boundary, overlooking all sorts of tricky things. But I think it's a great result.
Yeah, and a really tight budget as well. So, yeah.
Client's happy, so
that's the main thing.
Yeah, and we're happy.
That's the second main thing.
But we collaborated a bit differently on that one. This one we've done all the way together 50-50. The other one Minter took over the town planning a little bit more because Chris was still in Indonesia at the time, I think.
Yeah, there was slightly different stages of the project.
Yeah.
So,
and then Chris handled the other side.
Yeah. So with the crossover, what I was working on at the time in Bali, I gave more of that sort of to you. But then when it came to this project, it was, we had like a lot more time to be able to dedicate to this one.
So Chris had to deal with all the site things, which is great.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
But we've been lucky enough to have some pretty great builders. So Frank Built was on Aintree.
Shout out to Frank Built.
Yeah. And this one is
Ferguson Construction. Yeah, who've done a great job as well.
Yeah.
As you can see.
I'm sure. Yeah. Hopefully I framed it up okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty solid and it looks pretty great. It's, he's done a good job. Yeah.
So, obviously a lot of architects do collaborate, mainly with, engineers, town planners, landscape architects. What's some of the main differences between collaborating with one of those consultants versus collaborating with another architect?
Well, there are a lot of similarities in some ways. I mean, a lot of the skills that you would typically use collaborating with an architect, just as valid. So obviously, you're all working towards a common goal and, you have, a client that you're all sort of working to, deliver a really good result for. And so I guess the process of, working together, listening to each other and sort of, testing things and making sure things work versus what they don't, etc., is a similar process. I think probably some of the major differences is probably just in, obviously with the disciplines, as an architect, you're always trying to, push things as, far as they can go. And sometimes, structural engineers or other engineers or whatever it is, have a few reality checks for you. So, yeah, I mean, there's more sometimes, I guess, a bit of give and take in that regard.
I think the main difference for us is that working with a landscape architect or an interior designer, usually it's completely separate sort of service. So we come together, but we still provide separate services, like separate drawings or separate specs. Whereas in our case, we're teaming up. So the drawings have both of our names on it. the drawings have been reviewed by both of us. The spec has been written by both of us. The trick with the collaboration with two architects is just defining the terms of the scope that you're providing together, and then establishing a fair way to be effectively paid for those services. So in our case, we decided from the beginning it's one service fee that we split between us, but the work is obvious, the scope is split between us as well. So in this particular instance, although we're across the whole thing together, we do sort of lead sections within the building. So I did lead the interiors on this one, and you did lead the exteriors on this one. However, we were both reviewing both.
So that's like specifying the materials,
Correct.
the layouts,
Correct.
handling whatever regs, affect each one.
Exactly, yeah. And just taking more ownership over certain areas means that nothing gets missed. And yeah, there is some crossover, but obviously there's so much transparency as well. So, and I think that's what makes a difference.
Was that similar with your first project? Did you have those type of boundaries in that regard?
So in the first project, it was a split 50-50, but in a different way. So, we did the first stages and Chris did the last stages sort of thing.
So you probably did more the sketch design and that, and you did more the documentation?
Yeah.
I think that with that one...
we met it stage by stage.
Yeah.
But we were flicking things through and sort of marking stuff up. But then when it came to documentation, we took over the bulk of it. Then you guys did a review and that sort of thing.
Just shifted around a little bit differently.
Yeah.
What do you think works better for, say, you two? That first type of collaboration, or the inside-outside collaboration of this project? Or are you more open to trying other forms of collaboration?
I think it just is all about the point in time.
Yeah.
So it worked really well for the other one to do it that way, because obviously you were away, so you weren't able to be around as much in Melbourne, and so that made more sense. Whereas this way, we were both in town, so it just made more sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it really depends on the situation at the time, as Jeanne said, and how busy you are, how big the practice is at that time, and I think that's one of the great things about collaboration. It's not just about sort of both getting runs on the board. It's about helping each other out, and so whether I'm bringing value to Jeanne or Jeanne's bringing value to me, and that value can be because of, as we've talked about before, a life situation, or it might be a practice situation, in terms of workload, staff, etc.
So to sort of go a few steps backwards, collaboration in terms of your own practices and whatnot, you both have some, I would call them slightly different stories and methods and whatnot. Chris, you touched on earlier about your trip to Bali for a few months, and the collaboration, that's how you and Jeanne started to work together. And then Jeanne, you obviously have I would call it unique in small practice in architecture, your business model. So I guess trying to figure out where to start from there is, maybe, Jeanne, could you explain how your practice is set up and what collaboration means in your practice? Yeah,
so I guess coming from a larger practice originally as well, similar to Chris, I learned a lot of valuable lessons about how good a team can be, and how much more efficient and how much more work you can do. And I think that going into smaller practice, you do feel a little bit lonely, and you don't have as much cross-pollination. Sharing a studio with Chris and some other people was really good for us. And moving forward, our practice, we tend to have people based remotely, and they can choose to work in our office or work from home. And we have offices set up in Torquay and in Melbourne, and then people working from, say, Perth or one occasion Sydney. So, and even the people who work in Melbourne, they can work from the suburbs, so they don't have to necessarily come in, but they can choose, and they don't necessarily have to work 9 to 5, so they can structure their week around their projects. So it's project-specific employment as opposed to 9 to 5 days a week employment, which is the typical model. So I'm just thinking, well, what works for me? I don't want to work 5 days a week, for example, and I say I have these life commitments, then this will work for me. And so that's how I've structured it, and the team's built around that. And I think working with Chris and field office on the projects has sort of just felt like a bit of an extension to the team, and whoever we collaborate with also feels like that. So we work with interior designers and architects and landscape architects, and I think the only way to view it is more like project-specific extensions of the team as opposed to us and them. It's we always. Yep. And I think it's really important. The one thing that I felt a little bit upset about in the bigger firms was that it was a little bit isolating, and never felt like the people that did most of the work got to meet the client or ever got to see the site. Whereas in this practice, I'm trying to get everyone to be more engaged with the whole process and feel like, you know, part of the journey, because, you know, it's all about everyone as opposed to one person. Yeah.
So, you know, with someone based in Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Torquay, and let's say they're all working on a single project, what systems and what processes do you have in place to make that effective and efficient and smooth as possible?
So still a work in process, but we are sort of working with cloud-based management system, Google. So we've got a Google Drive set up, and we use Hangouts for our meetings. So often we try and touch base with everyone in the team frequently, and there's sort of program management meeting where everyone knows what everyone's doing. So we know when people are working or what they're working on, so everyone in the team is aware, and everything's found online. So I could be in a coffee shop on my iPhone and know what's in the file, where everything is. And so it's very similar to the bigger practices. It's more flexible. Yeah.
And I guess in that kind of scenario, you know, like, you know, your collaborators, I don't want to call them your employees, but, you know, the people you work with, you know, they have to be, even yourself, you have to be diligent in uploading to the cloud. Right. You need to be able to effectively communicate through email, as that can be quite difficult, or be available on phone between certain hours and whatnot. So Chris, to throw it over to you, when you went to Bali for 3 months and wanted to continue, like to test, it was effectively to test, can I work remotely? What did you set up before you left, like in terms of processes and systems, and like what was, or maybe to backtrack just a little bit, like why did you want to go to Bali for 3 months? I mean, we all know why you want to go to Bali for 3 months.
Do I really need to explain?
Yeah, I mean, it's Bali for 3 months, but I guess what intrigued you about this idea of the nomadic architect?
It was really, I mean, in a way we're trying to sort of test to see if it could work in a way. So at the time, my wife Bonnie, she was looking to sort of make a bit of a career switch, and we needed sort of, I guess, almost like a line in the sand type thing to encourage that. And I know I had this idea in my head that, you know, I just wanted to go to Bali and surf for 3 months, but when you run a small practice, you can't.
Responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we were only, 2 years old at that point, and we felt like we had a lot of momentum, and I didn't want to shut it down. You know, I wanted to keep it going. And yeah, I mean, you sort of see a lot of other industries have gone that way, you know, where people are working from all over the world, you know, whether it be design industry or tech or whatever it is, like startups and product, that sort of thing, you know, people are using, I suppose, the fact that technology allows us with, you know, laptops and I guess all the cloud-based software that Jeanne was talking about to do this thing remotely. So yeah, we just thought, oh, bugger it, like why not architecture?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, all those things that Jeanne talked about, exactly the same thing, you know, cloud-based storage for folders and things. We use Slack, which we still use all the time, and a whole bunch of other little, you know, things like that. I think, I mean, the thing that I sort of learnt, because obviously we were collaborating with Jeanne, but we were also collaborating with a few other people in Melbourne at the time who were sort of pulling up other aspects of the business where we needed them to. And I mean, one of the things that we sort of developed, and I guess it's one of those things that looking to push further, I guess, regardless of where we are, and that is that sort of online, I guess just a system of how you do things and just have that recorded. So, you know, you have processes for things, and, you know, when you get those processes down pat and streamlined and everyone knows them, then it just takes out so much of the hassle that comes with, you know, any sort of design industry. So, and anything that's, you know, project based, where, yeah, you're encountering different problems day to day, but, you know, 95% chance that someone that you're collaborating with has encountered that problem before.
Yeah.
So how were your days structured? I like to think you were surfing 9 to 5, but I don't think you were, unfortunately. So how would you, because, you know, the idea is like, you know, if you go to Bali, you obviously want to enjoy Bali, but you also need to work.
Yeah.
So how did you sort of set up your days to effectively do both?
Well, I mean, yeah, as you said, it would have been nice that it was 9 to 5 surfing, but it really wasn't. It was maybe, you know, 3 days a week, and it would be sort of early from maybe 7 till about 9 or 10. I guess, and so, you know, take for example a day like that. I mean, I was at the desk by 10 o'clock and I would typically work till, you know, 6, sometimes, you know, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But I mean, it wasn't like I was AWOL at any stage. I was still running the practice as I would here. I guess one of the key things to do is when you are working directly with people who, I guess are a team, is just to sort of have a regular touch, you know, meetings, touch base, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things I made sure of every day. It was sort of like 11 o'clock every day. I would jump in a call with one of my main guys who was based in Melbourne, and who was sort of overseeing everything from a broad level point of view. And that just sort of made me, just gave me a sense of where everything was at exactly right then, what we needed to do. And sometimes, you know, just being aware of what's happening is all you need, you know, and to make you feel, yeah, good about sort of what's, you know, what's happening.
I feel like if you have the right people with you, your presence, physical presence, isn't always needed.
Oh yeah.
Like they can just do what needs to be done. They know the systems you've put in place, the processes, but they're also, you are still available for, you know, communications if needed. Like if they have a problem, it's like, you know, you're still contactable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it, you know, at the end of the day, you're collaborating, you know. So, I mean, Jeanne, we haven't shared a studio for about 3 years now.
Yeah.
And though we still are sort of able to, you know, with 100% confidence, be able to work together and, you know that everything is working really well towards the, I suppose, the desired outcome, you know. And so, yeah, it's the same way that it would be with staff or other collaborators, in that you trust them, and, you know, as long as they're good people and they're people that you know, train within the system, then it's going to work.
But in the same thing, they're not isolated, they're not alone.
Yeah.
So if there's an issue, they can call, or they can email, or they can talk to someone connected to the team. So they're not, you know, running free and wild. Everyone has there's a support network. And I think the difference in this occasion is that the support network is widened. So, you know, we can bounce off each other and ask questions that we might feel uncomfortable asking, or, you know, is this door handle nice? I can't tell anymore. I've looked at 10, 100,000 and, you know, so that...
Can't see a door handle here.
No, there are none because
we couldn't reach a decision.
We just decided none.
No handles at all.
Yeah.
So, I guess talking about collaborators, how do you go about collaborating with your clients? So they obviously come to you with a problem, whatever that problem may be. How then do you start to begin that collaboration with the clients in terms of, you know, they give you ideas, obviously you're the architect, you've got roles and scopes of works and that. Clients and collaborations, how are you with that?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of crossover, I guess, isn't there?
Yeah.
With some of the things that we've talked about. I mean, again, you're working towards something, and when you have, particularly when you have a really passionate client who, you know, particularly in residential, where often it's, you know, their dream home, you know, they've been saving for it for years and saving pictures in, you know, Pinterest and that sort of thing. You know, there's such a keen, I suppose, desire from their point of view to, I don't know, to be heard, I guess. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is listening and a lot of it is, you know, understanding what they want. But also, yeah, it is about sort of working with them and breaking down a brief and sort of really interrogating, you know, what they think they want versus what they actually want. And sometimes that's the biggest challenge, you know, because a lot of people think they want something and it turns out maybe they want something a little bit beyond that or within that or wrapped inside it, you know.
Yeah, we have to uncover it.
You're like a kid on Christmas Day.
Or investigation, we think, okay, so what is it you really
say this, but do you actually mean this?
But I mean, a really good example, maybe on this project, was the timber ceiling, which originally was timber battens, and our client who connected with Provence Timber, and they had this new product, which was this sort of shiplap profile with a routing in it that it's just fantastic. I mean, you can see it above. And she took us this product and we're like, oh, what about this? And it was
even the cladding, because Provence had this like second level and it was all set up with a showroom. And we were going to use this Yakasuki timber and the price came in and we were like, and the client goes, I found this other stuff, what do you think of this? And then we were like, wow. And we thought it was going to be way more expensive. And she goes, it's not, it's really not.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, great.
Yeah.
So sometimes clients can really be fantastic, and especially when they know, you know, they know what we're about because we've communicated it, and then they can assist. So for example, the door handle for the front door, the clients work through Provence again to find the best handle appropriate for the house, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be like as cosmetic as that, or it can be like a really functional collaboration as well, which like we really enjoy.
Okay, so yesterday we put a call out on Instagram for questions for Jeanne and Chris. We had a few that came through. So this one is from Danica Williams. How does Jeanne manage an online office? Pros and cons. So you kind of touched on how you manage it. Maybe if you could expand upon the pros and the cons of an online office.
Yeah. Well, the cons probably would be that you don't get to see all your colleagues every day. And you sometimes don't know quite where everyone is, like what they're doing and what's happening. But the pros are that if you establish deliverables and you all are clear on what they are, then you know that by Friday when you have that meeting they'll be met. So that's really nice. And it's also nice to know that people are working around their schedules and their availabilities, so they're committed to the time that they give, as opposed to just sitting in an office and looking bored. Like, people are actually doing what they want to be doing. So some cons also from a managing point of view are that you have to put more work into making sure you touch base with everyone, making sure you're on top of the schedules, making sure you're billing correctly, and making sure that everyone's putting in their timesheets and things like that. The pros are that you know you can trust everyone to do it, and you know that it'll be done. And when you do touch base with them more regularly, it actually has a benefit for you, because you feel like you're talking to people as well. Whereas when you're in an office every day, sometimes you take it for granted and you don't have 5 minutes to talk to each other. So yeah, I think it's actually really good. And also, it's nice when 2 a.m, Cara might send me an image of something, and then 3 a.m, James will respond, because all an Instagram group messaging and stuff. So it's like, no matter where you are in the world, we're all still connected, and it's quite nice.
I think it's sort of, the future of the industry anyway. I mean, I don't think it's sort of that much of a novel thing, like the online aspect. I think that all software is sort of allowing for that now, and it's really great that Jeanne and other practices are like starting to sort of like really embrace it.
It's just a mindset, really.
I think coming from someone that is quite introverted, it is a nice idea that I can, work at home in my own little space, but still be part of a team. But obviously, you also need to be really well at self-managing as well, to make sure you do the work. Because if you're working from home, or you're working in Bali, when there's a beach right there, if you're easily distracted or a chronic procrastinator, like maybe that's not the best
Well, then maybe
system.
you just work from the office.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can't trust yourself not to get distracted. But then sometimes you might need the time alone so you can work on the thinking or the fine contracts. So, horses for courses, but the choice is there.
Yeah. So, asks, when is the Regent Street project going to be finished?
Wow. I don't know if that's a question for us, really, is it?
Any day now. As you can see, it's probably, I should point out our client.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
And the builder's running a little bit late, but we're hoping that just probably a few weeks away, hopefully.
Yeah, soon. We hope, yeah. Look, I think what's important to focus on there is quality over time.
Yeah.
It's getting done well, so.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I've realised how distracting it is to film these.
This is really hard. I keep looking at everything.
Because I'm constantly looking at all the little details and all the
I know.
finishings.
I'm like, oh, yeah, the plumbing.
And then the last question, you're going to hear his name, but I'm going to bleep it to protect his anonymity and keep him anonymous. So, who's the better architect?
So who are you bleeping out?
With
his name?
His name. And he even put a little smirky face there. So who is the better architect?
Well, I think that we both have to sort of be very diplomatic
And say yourself.
Sorry?
And say it's yourself.
I think we both know the answer to that.
There is no better architect. All architects are fantastic, and I think anybody who engages an architect is already a winner. And I think that all architects aspire to do the best for their clients. And I think just teaming up as a bigger group, we can provide a better service, but or different kind of service, more, options for you. But there is no better architect. That's a cheeky question.
I know. And I should say as well, like the fact that we collaborate together is indication that, this isn't about us. This is about sort of doing something that we really believe in. And it's not a competition at all, and it's
all about seeing it finished and the happiness that the client gets to see, and hearing the positiveness, like the stories about, oh, I had a dinner party and the light was this, and or I was washing the dishes and the drawer's right there. That's fantastic. Those sorts of things. That's what gives us joy, I think.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Me. Yeah.
Okay, we'll sort of finish it there because we're sweating. I know I am. Thanks for being the first on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much.
No
for
worries.
having us.
Thanks for having us.
If you want to give us a rating on whatever platform you're on, that will help with...
Not who's the best architect.
No, don't rate who's the best architect. Rate the podcast. Give it, depending on where you watch it, give it thumbs up. Share it with your friends, all that good stuff. And if you have a question for a future architect, send it in. I'll leave an email down below, and then, we'll sort of just leave it at that, I think.